Welcome. Today we are going to do an in-depth look at the life, the career, and the death of a Formula One legend and icon. For me, the greatest of all time. He streaked through the sport like a comet from beyond the stars, enlightening the Formula One with both his charisma and his style, his intellect, his genius. Born in 1960 on March 21st, Ayrton Senna da Silva was born in Brazil. He had a wealthy family where him, his brother, and his sister, and himself, they had a great lifestyle. He didn't have to race for money, but at the age of 4, when given a go-kart, he got the bug for racing. He loved it. He took it to the extreme. At the age of 13, he won his first karting race and then decided it's time to go to Britain and go into single-seater racing. And immediately he was a success and he won. He won, sorry. 3 years, he won 5 championships, by which time he had divorced already a young wife before he even embarked on a Formula One career, which he debuted in 1984 for the Tolman team. Not many people probably knew much about Ayrton when he first started. That was soon put in the bag in the 1984 Monaco Grand Prix, which, to be fair, most people do consider as the toughest Grand Prix there is. It was absolutely chucking it down. So much so that Alain Prost said, look, guys, we need to call this off. But by the time he had done that, Ayrton had already shown his brilliance. He did go on in the future to win this race 6 times, but he basically came from the back of the pack to get to second. In fact, he even overtook the winner, Alain Prost, but because the race had been cancelled, it went back to the previous lap. So technically, we could say should have had 7, but incredible racing by Senna. So with the Tolman team, they really weren't in a place to give Ayrton the car that he wanted, desired, probably deserved. So he brought out the remainder of his contract. Remember, he is from a very rich, or was from a very rich family. And he went then and raced for Lotus. Lotus were a good team. They, in the past, he'd had the likes of Nelson Piquet, who was a 2-time, I believe, world champion. And yeah, he showed his talents. So, he would push himself to the limits. Now, if you ever go back and watch clips of these cars from the mid late 80s or early 80s to the mid early 1990s, these cars aren't like the cars that we have today, where, don't get me wrong, they are incredibly powerful today, but these cars were monstrously more powerful. These cars had an incredible amount of torque and power. These are much faster than the cars they have today, or much more powerful than the cars they have today, sorry. They were more dangerous. If you have a crash in these, there's a better chance that you could get much more serious injuries. When you look at the advancement of, let's say the modern McLaren, take that to the McLaren which Senna was driving, you got to think a lot of the time that he was going around those Monaco circuits, in which one year he actually was 1.2 seconds faster than his teammate Alain Prost. Alain Prost himself, one of the finest drivers of all time. In fact, me and my late uncle, we used to argue about who was the best. Both McLaren fans, we both supported them, but for me, it was always Senna, and for him, he preferred the Frenchman. And Alain Prost was a full-time world champion and an unbelievable talent. But there was just something about the arrogance and the cockiness of Senna and the way he would drive that car to within an inch of its death. They were literally shaking all over the circuit. You know, you'd think, my word, I wouldn't want to be driving in that. But Senna used to just get it right. Even when he didn't have the most powerful car, he was one of the hardest people to overtake in the sport. Even with old, worn out tyres, he knew how to get that car around and stop someone with brand new, super sticky tyres who had faster cars. They weren't getting past him. He was an absolute pain in the proverbials. He knew where to put his car, and basically you have a choice. You take that line and you hit me, or you give way. You give way once, I've got you in my head. And he got into the head of many a driver. Most drivers in the paddock who raced against him or with him would argue that, yeah, Senna was so special, probably the greatest of all time. You know, there's lots of people out there who will do a documentary. I was going to read a script which I'd, well, let's say I read, but to be fair, it was something I found about him online. But I find you don't really want to have someone just looking at a list of stuff. Look into the camera. Tell me your opinions. So for me, Senna, yeah, unbelievable. I'm not saying that Ayrton Senna is better than, let's say, modern day Lewis Hamilton. Lewis is a 7 times champion. He's had more pole positions, more wins, more races than Senna. And Lewis is perhaps the closest we now have to Ayrton Senna. But there was just something about Ayrton, and you know, with the tragic end to his life, but what a way for him to go out racing and leading in a Williams. You know, it wasn't the team which he's going to be remembered for. The team he'll be remembered for will be the McLaren in its red and white. Fantastic cars. Him and Prost, obviously in Suzuka. Prost took him out once. Then when driving for Ferrari, Senna, basically to win the championship, needed Alain Prost not to beat him. So he put his car in a position where he would take Alain Prost out. Now, in modern laws, I'm sure, you know, if you go to football's VAR, if you had a system like that, you're going to say, you deliberately took him out. You shouldn't have won that title. And even as a Senna fan, you know, you've got to hold your hands up and say, yeah, he did take it too far. He knew how to do that, though. He knew how to take it just to the right point of perfection. My uncle, again, he didn't like Senna because he felt that at times he would cheat to win. I didn't see it as cheating. I saw it as taking it to the limit. He was exciting. He brought a certain razzle-dazzle to a sport which, you know, it's a sport. It is. It's what it's there for. You know, it's to make it glamorous and make it a mystique, and no one had any more glamour mystique about them than the late great Ayrton Senna. For me, the finest racing driver of all time. But you know, everyone out there will have their own views on who was the greatest. Coming after him, you had the great Michael Schumacher, who went on to become a 7 times champion. And even before him, you had Juan Manuel Fangio, who I've mentioned in one of my previous videos. If you haven't seen that, then the Le Mans race in 1955, he took part in that. He is arguably the greatest as well, 5 times world champion. Then you've got Schumacher with his 7 times, and obviously now Lewis Hamilton, who has in many ways surpassed him. It's a tragedy really also when you look at the life of Schumacher. Great driver, retired in 2011. and then in his own time, enjoying time with his friends and family on a skiing trip, fell over, got brain damage, and is still, you know, he's basically in a vegetable state now. It's tragic. He'd raced his whole life, possibly the greatest of all time, and now is, what can you say? That's a terrible loss as well to the sport. He was unbelievably good. Anyway, I'm going to leave you there. Hope you found the video slightly interesting. If you do, give us a thumbs up, give us a like. I do hope you're all doing well. See you, pals.